to make sure we understand magnification and inverse square law. Okay, so let's finish this up. This is how a wet read works digitally. All right, the doctor sent the lateral foot x-ray, and the question was, is this a fracture or not? So these days we can turn around a stat read if you need to know within an hour. Okay, if things are going well. Back in the day, I said, I could say the FedEx or the UPS truck hasn't gotten here with your x-rays. I don't have that excuse anymore. They send it, an hour later, where's my report? Okay, so just as busy as they are, you know what the internet is like 24/7, right? Okay, this is going from a digital system to my digital works, just like you see in the office when you're doing film reading with me. And it says pain in the proximal fifth metatarsal, positive tuning fork denies trauma. So tuning fork can be false negatives and false positives, all just to show you from their digital workstation. That's what a normal base of fifth looks like. So it's easy to, when the two computer consoles are talking, and they talk through a HIPAA compliant virtual private network. So it's all computer safe until someone figures out how to hack into it, okay? So this is the world we're in, okay? DICOM image is the standard, so what they had to come up with, the manufacturers, they had to take the image that was done on a conventional x-ray with all its grains of silver and reproduce it in the digital format, and once the government officials were satisfied that they were equal, then they could start selling these things. And all that to say the exposure on digital imaging is a lot less than it is on conventional x-ray, especially for the large body part, which is what? In your body, lateral lumbar in particular, okay? So DICOM, digital information and communication in medicine, all right? PACS, picture archiving computer system. So we have a PACS system here at the school, so all the images get taken by the computer and they get sent to my office for archiving and for me to be able to read, so I don't have to walk down to the x-ray suite, all right? But this is all predicated on what common denominator? What is the common thing that sort of keeps all this thing going from one computer to the next?
The digital part of it?
Internet.
Internet.
And when the internet is down, just like it's down at Kaiser, it's a bad internet day.
That's every day.
It sucks, right? It's gonna suck in your office because you can't do insurance verification, you can't communicate with patients, they can't communicate with your website, all right? So this is all dependent on electricity and the internet, and you'll read periodically in the dumpster they found 10,000 CDs. That's a HIPAA violation, okay? By the time they get down to my office with one CD, and your little office with one CD that you happen to throw out, okay? They go after the big fish first, right? Okay? But we did have to talk to our courier who was bringing CDs from wherever, all right? And they didn't understand they had to be in a box, and the box had to be sealed. So on the one time, it did end up in the puddle of water. That's a big no-no, okay? They can be, they have a finite shelf life. I mean, it's not, you know, a couple days or whatnot, but you get the idea. These can be broken, they can be fractured, and everything that goes along with it. So everything along this path, whatever you set up, has issues that goes along with it. A risk versus a benefit, okay? So somewhere in here is your laptop with voice dictation on it, right? All right, so that's our entry point into digital imaging acquisition systems. So now I want you to load up the other one. I don't know if this one is the same as yours. Yes? Pretty close?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So they use like digital encrypted clouds for,
Yep,
okay.
because in Florida, you have to store your images for how long? 7 years.
Got it.
Okay, your computer doesn't have enough room, so you can store it on another computer, or you can pay
Cloud
Apple
storage.
Cloud,
Okay.
okay? I don't like that particular scenario because what if, it's not Apple I'm worried about, but you've got somebody in Denver who says, I'll store your images.
Yeah.
Okay, what if they get bought by a big fish?
Like storage tank. Yeah.
Okay,
Good luck with
and the
that.
business model favors who? Them or me?
Then,
Them. Okay, so now I have a case. I remember a spondylolisthesis case that I need, and the attorney wants the report or wants the images, and I say I want it back in 2 days. You can get it back in 2 days, but there's an upcharge for that.
You send them encrypted then, of course?
No, it's gonna be encrypted to them and they store it, but now I want it back because my attorney needs a report or needs the images. So they have to send it back to me, right? So they're gonna go into their database and find it. But because of the quick turnaround time, I'm gonna pay, what, $50, an extra $100? Okay, so I like to keep things in-house if I can,
Yeah.
okay, but everything's moving to the cloud. You can do the voice dictation, for those of you who have sat with me, cloud-based, but you're gonna pay more than, you're gonna pay whatever the going rate is, depending on which company you like, okay? You can do all your SOAP notes via the cloud, then you don't have to buy the hardware. If something goes wrong, they're on the hook for it. That's why it costs more than it costs me, because I've got all my equipment. My equipment goes down and I don't want to take the time and the money to change it anymore, I may be forced into cloud-based as well. It's heading that way, okay? But then having heard that, who told me about 33 RPM platters are coming back?
What is that?
Somebody in this class? Old vinyl is coming, making
What is that?
vinyl records.
Oh, yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
You're not dreaming this, or?
No, I got it.
Alright.
Sorry, I was like, what?
Yeah, I didn't explain it very well.
Yeah.
I'm not a music guy. All right, so back in the day, we had a manual processor. You put the images in there, and then it got sent out. You had to store it somewhere. Okay, you could see it on a ViewBox. Old style. Back in the day, 1976. I'm glad I didn't have to do that. We had tanks, and we had to clean tanks. I didn't have to clean them. Took Mrs. Lambert probably the better part of anywhere from 2 to 4 hours on Saturday morning to get all that. We don't want that technology. You want point and shoot. I need to see it now, right? Okay? Well, if you can see it now, you can send it to your orthopedic surgeon because the patient says, I'm going to the orthopedic surgeon now. Yes? That's just how the technology works. Okay, so this is a digital system. So what happened? Digital artifacts, where? Necklace, okay? And the way the radiology gods work, what's behind the necklace? What is it?
Possibly a
Fused vertebral body?
No, it's more than a fused vertebral body. Now we call it what?
A block.
Why is it a block?
Because it's multiple. Anterior concavity.
Anterior concavity. This is the remnant disc space.
Yep.
This disc space is different than this one, so there's already degenerative disc disease. And there's disc narrowing here. What you're finding is block
Anterior.
vertebral body.
Yep.
Do you know what the posterior elements are like?
Yep.
Can you tell? I can't tell, so the next step is
Flexion.
flexion. Okay? Now, the next thing I can point out to you, this is the orientation of the mid-cervical facet joints. C2 and 3 is always more steeply inclined. That's normal for C2 posterior joints. So the point is, I know this is a digital system, and I can show you the other 6 views of the cervical spine that we're done with the necklace on. Okay, at some point, somebody has to realize, oh my gosh, I took the necklace, it's still on. So take it off, okay? So the point here is, just because you have digital technology, it's all dependent on whom?
The person.
Operator and operator error or lack of operator error, okay? What are the advantages? All of these. You don't have to memorize them. There are more upsides, and the only downside is, how do I write it? The only downside is, okay, everybody wants one. You have to figure out how you're going to afford and what are you going to do in the meantime. I have a hard time with doctors that tell me I don't have markers because I can't afford it. They're the ones at Starbucks lining up for the Vente, Frappe, whatever, okay? So, more advantages. All right, the biggest one is less exposure to the patient. And in North Carolina, there was regular offices and there were digital offices, and believe it or not, a chiropractic assistant would wait until a position came open in a digital office, so she didn't have to work in an office where they had the processor with the fumes and the chemicals. That's a reality these days, okay? All right. You don't need a dark room anymore. You can have a room with lights and have a digital system in it. We've talked about throughput time. You can improve marginal images, and we'll talk about that shortly, okay? And I just sort of touched on this based on what I experienced in North Carolina. And for those doctors that are older and have a digital system, you don't want to go out and buy an office, a practice that has a conventional X-ray. You're going to say, we're going to have to negotiate a discount because the first thing I want to put in here is
A digital
Rolex
X-ray,
machine. Not after you spend all your clinic time with a nice smooth Rayans machine. That's just going backwards. And this is old, but in Florida, we can't put chemicals down the water anymore. We have to collect them, but that's old stuff, okay? Put a big star beside this. Old-fashioned technology, the band of purple is pretty narrow, right? The column is narrow.
Mhm.
That's what we mean by a digital detector. It's a wider band of light or a lighter shade of pale purple. That means that there's more forgiveness. That's what all of this fancy terminology means. Less exposure and more forgiveness. So we can take a film that is overexposed and lighten it up a little bit, but we can't take a underexposed light film and make it darker. There are just not enough pixels. So in the digital system, behind the screen are a bunch of dots. And there is like 1,000, many dots as you can put into a cubic centimeter. And they're the ones that capture the information from the X-ray as it hits the patient. And then those crystals convert that X-ray energy into light energy. Does that make sense? And the more sophisticated your crystal is and cassette is behind you, behind the patient in the digital system, that's where all the expenses in this digital world. All right? So more forgiveness, less retakes, and certainly less exposure to the patient. So old conventional analog X-ray column, the wider one is digital, and for me now there's only one column, it's called DR, point and shoot. I'll show you what the cassette base looks like in the lab, but do not buy a cassette-based system. They'll say, here, I'll give it to you for 10 grand. Sounds like a great deal. But what are you doing? Someone has to put the cassette into the reader. They have to wait till it's read, have to bring it back out, and now it's ready to go. So if that takes her a minute,
You gotta pay for that manpower.
you gotta pay for that manpower. And if it's a minute and you have 7 years of cervical spine, she's out of commission for 7 minutes, she can't answer your phone for you. You've traded one bad technology for a different one. Okay. What is this?
Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, okay, and so now we can get 1 row of yellow, 2 rows of yellow. We can create a 3-dimensional image out of our 3-dimensional patient. We couldn't do that. All right. Definitions I want you to be aware of. So matrix is X, Y, Z axis, or double width times length and depth. Pixel is a small sample of an image, so the small dots, the laser, is a pixel. Spatial resolution. We talk about radiographic detail in the plain film world. This is the digital world. That simply means how can you differentiate between the anterior cortex of a vertebral body and the medullary cavity. Radiographic detail in the digital world is called spatial resolution. DQE is a fancy term for converting X-ray energy into light energy. So if you have a detector that has more dots in it, that's a good thing. It can convert this X-ray energy into light energy that the computer captures. And because of this enhancement or this quality, this is where you're paying the money. Everything else, we have to have an X-ray tube, we have to have a generator, we have to have a place for the cassette to be, or the film receptor. You hear me say that word. But it's because of these little dots. The more dots you have, the better your radiographic detail is going to be. Does that make sense? So when you buy this system for $25,000, the digital cassette is probably 20 grand of that. Okay? It's the technology. So what do I suggest? If you're looking, look for used equipment, but you have to be ready to move quickly. There's going to be a system, but before that system gets put out on whatever, there's people looking for it, right? All right, and the last thing is just for information. So this this and this. Lookup tables, back in the day, we had to look up on our charts, what's the KVP I need to use, what's the MAS? The software does it automatically for you. So the minute you put in, this is a small patient, the computer software will spit out the KVP that's needed and the MAS that's required.
It's
It's
awesome.
almost idiot-proof. Where the problem comes in is Nan's a small patient. Daniel right beside her is not medium, he's large. If you guess incorrectly for Dan and say he's medium, you'll get a bad x-ray. You have to make that adjustment. At what point does small become medium, and when does medium transition to large? And then there's gonna be Dorian, who's off the charts. He has to be manually overridden, and he's the biggest large of the large, extra large. And if your digital machine can't take it, you may have to be going to the MR center where they can get an x-ray that is working for Dorian. Now, we chuckle, but in high school, football players
No.
are getting bigger and more muscular.
Sure.
That can happen, okay? So in the digital world, they try to make it as easy as they can, as convenient, but there are some limitations. Where does small end, et cetera.
And they have a chart for that?
You don't have a chart. Automatically, when you look at Stefano, you have to decide, is he small, medium, or large? He's not small, he's not medium, he's large. But the large may not be large enough. They set up the machine for
Gotcha.
the average dimension.
Sure.
Then, as soon as you put that in, it pops up 80 kVp or an AP lumbar and these time signals. It does it for you, but it doesn't say this is gonna be necessarily a good image. We won't know that until we take it.
Gotcha.
This is the cassette-based system, CR World. What's this?
I remember those.
Yeah, an Etch-a-Sketch is a good analogy. You draw the picture, put this Etch-a-Sketch in a film reader. It's a big old box, and then it magically erases everything like this image, and then you can start again, okay? But Fuzzy's right, it's manpower and labor intensive. You're paying for her to be doing this when she'd be doing other things for you, okay? Why don't you want to be taking the x-rays?
Because you need to be doing something else.
What's something else? Diagnosing and, okay, so that, seeing patients. Only you can diagnose, only you can manipulate. So you want to get a CA who is trained to take x-rays, and in Florida, they take a certifying exam, but that doesn't help them with the hands-on. You have to spend some time training them and saying collimation is important. They can get the where does the central ray go from the book, and they take a test that's certified by the Florida Department of Health. It's not an easy exam. They have to pass it with 75 on the theoretical. You're gonna have to help them with the hands-on stuff. But it's doable, because you don't wanna be doing that. Your skill is not in doing 10 manual pumps on a Cox table. Your skill is diagnosing who needs the Cox flexion distraction technique, okay? You've gotta get that into your mindset, I think. Okay, so this is this system. Now, because of the reimbursement rates right at the very beginning, they were going down, everybody sold sold these and upgraded to the DR system. So these are out there by the hundreds, and they're inexpensive. So if you want to get into it, you can, but you're gonna have limitations. What they've come up with is something called a hybrid system. So you need an X-ray tube, you need a generator, and if you get the digital cassette, they can put the two pieces together, and that's called a hybrid system, and you might be able to get away with a less expensive, not 25 grand piece of equipment. Okay? And typically what I've done with previous classes, I've had an X-ray salesman come in, but not during COVID, and he gives his presentation on what his company does. Makes sense, I would try to get the Rayance guy in, and you can ask him all the questions you want, okay? And it doesn't matter whether we do it in this semester. If he comes, I might just make him present in the auditorium where everybody has their dibs.
Do like a grand round.
Okay? You can ask him the non-biased questions. All right, so just understand the flow here. Take the x-ray, it has to be read, it has to be erased, and then it finally shows up on your computer screen. We don't want this. We want this, straight to an image, okay? Now put a big star beside this slide. This is the size of the crystal. What's happening to the numbers as they go down this way?
Decreases.
decreases. So less expensive, most expensive. Why? This is a smaller number, and I can put a smaller size crystal into a cubic centimeter, right? That's why it's more expensive. So these are the different types of crystals that are available. You don't have to memorize it, okay? This is DR, direct radiology. This is the gadolinium gadolinium, and this is the particular name to it. And just realize it has a crystal size of this. Okay, if you want cesium iodide crystals, that's another choice. It's a smaller crystal that's going to cost you more money because we can put more of these crystals into a unit. All right? Now, if you look at the images, two images, and you don't know these numbers, and they look the same to you, and you actually like this one better, or this one, that's the one you should buy because your eye can only perceive a certain range. Okay? You don't necessarily get a better, more for your buck with this, but why would I choose this if I was doing sports injuries? Because I'm x-raying small body parts, right? And with small body parts, I need more radiographic detail. Everyday chiropractic spine work, we could probably layer somewhere in here. This is pretty well too old because it's CR, so we could make this work, all right? It's gonna be less expensive, but if you wanna get into appendicular work, sports injury or any, whatever, pediatrics or something, you would want the smallest crystals because you're gonna get better spatial resolution, more radiographic detail. And of course, you're gonna pay for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next thing to understand, just conceptually, is red, green, blue, and I'm not insulting your intelligence, I'm just saying how many steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Which is better? Fewer steps or more?
Fewer.
Fewer. You're gonna pay for direct DR technology. It's the same idea as this. We have fewer steps, you're gonna see the image a lot faster, you're paying for that convenience. And all I'm saying, now that you have a basic understanding of this, or have been introduced to it, those are the questions you want to ask. You're gonna get a spec sheet of all the parameters of your digital system, used or otherwise, that you think of buying. I can't help you after you've signed on the dotted line. We can't change anything. What is their job? What's the salesman's job to do?
Sell high.
Upsell. Okay? He wants you to get in, he or she wants you to get into the, you're gonna get better images here, Doc. Why? You heard of spatial resolution, salesman? Just a minute, I gotta talk to my boss. Get out of there, get out of there, okay? So their job is to upsell, okay? Physical equipment as well as software. They want you to have the gold software package. I don't need the gold software package if I only use 2 functions of Microsoft Word. It drives me crazy. I have to spend more time figuring out what all these icons mean. I use the same stuff over and over again, as I'm sure you all do. Okay? So that's the principle behind this, as well as fewer steps are better in the imaging world, in the digital imaging world. All right? So this is what it looked like. The crystals are different. Okay, so this is a point of differentiation. They have readers and erasers, which the DR system did not have. Put a big star beside this. They're also reimbursing you less. So you want this system?
No.
No. Get out of there. Don't buy it. Or at least talk to me and I'll say, no, you shouldn't. You're spending your hard-earned money, okay, buying a CR system. Now, Maureen, if you can buy it some and sell it to some unknown idiotic chiropractor, make a buck on it, I'm not against that. But I think you're better served by watching to see when their chiropractors who thought they were gonna make $1 million go out of business. And you might be able to pick up a cheap, system on the cheap, or you might be able to get enough pieces where you put a hybrid system together. Okay, so differences between CR systems and DR. Notice the size of these things, it's gonna get different. So inside this reader, it's erased by laser light, which isn't important, just understand it goes through some steps before it gets to this. I want you to realize this is what a reader looks like in the clinic, in the rad labs across the way. It's that huge curved box, and then there's a computer screen right beside it. So here are different readers eraser. This is big and bulky, and here it says 30. So 30 of these cassettes per minute. If you want increased speed, you're gonna pay a premium for that. It's all about speed. But these are mechanical devices, they can only go so fast. We don't even want to think about that. We want, take the picture, and there it is, the direct system. So what am I suggesting you do? Hold out until you can figure out how you're gonna afford this big elephant in the room. This is what we have. It's the cheapest box, okay, and every vendor has their way of selling them. So there's big vendors, just like buying a Chev versus a Ferrari. The Chev will get you there, the Ferrari will get you there a lot faster. Depends on whether you can afford the Ferrari. All right? Typically, I stand at the back and lean against the wall. Okay, so A, this is plain film. Why do you like this one better?
You can see more.
More detail, you can see more things, smaller things, okay? This is enhanced software, so remember me telling you about, you can pay for basic copper package, the silver package, or the gold package. And that package enhances your radiographic image of a little person, okay? This is conventional X-ray. Now notice there's collimation on the front side, but it's not in the back. That's not you. If you've been in the rad lab enough, you can notice that we can move the collimators around, right? And if they get bumped, they cause this unequal edge. It's not you, it's the equipment. It's been bumped and used by everybody in the morning, and then we come in and accidentally bump it. It's not a big deal. But that's why you get this sort of asymmetric strip. We all want this, but if they say that's an extra $1,000, I'd like to spend my money elsewhere, okay? And in the digital world, there are normal variants and artifacts just like there were in your world, okay? What does that mean? This is what a hip replacement looks like. This line shouldn't be there. This is what happens when the cassette goes into the reader and it leaves these lines. And if there's one line, okay, but if the lines go all the way up to the ischial tuberosity, this ischial tuberosity is normal, this one is not. There's a little bit of a problem here, okay? So, all kinds of artifacts. This is not good, this looks like a checkerboard. So, these lines, the dark lines shouldn't be here, and the squares shouldn't be here, right? This is software related. So the software and the hardware have to be calibrated not fairly regular, let's say once a year. And the way the X-ray companies work, they want you to get a service contract. What does that mean?
Every time you need service, you give them a call and you pay them.
Okay, and if you don't call them, they still pay, right?
That's right. It's like Apple.
I want incident support, okay? If I have a problem, I'll call you. I don't need 10 features on the X-ray on my computer, I only need the 3 that I want to use, so I'm a modular guy, okay? But some of the doctors don't want to pay the $1,000 for the service, not the agreement, but the incident, okay? But what happens if this creeps all the way up to the lumbosacral junction? Can you see anything?
No.
No. You have to at some point pay for the recalibration. There's already a plate here. This was a pelvis fracture that had a cortical plate put onto it. If I miss this, I'm doing a disservice to the doctor if I'm reading for it. If you're reading it and you didn't see that because of this, you didn't realize the patient had a plate in. You now send them out for an MRI because their back pain isn't getting any better. Thankfully, the MR center says, do you have any metal in your body? The patient says, I don't remember. They'll take another X-ray because they don't want to miss this. This can get pulled out of their body in the MRI scan. Do they want that liability?
No.
No, because you were too, no, cheap's not the right word. Too what?
Frugal.
Frugal's not the right word. You didn't understand the importance of having your machine
Yeah.
calibrated. Okay? Now, I don't want the
Ignorant.
guys coming every week because they're charging me for travel time. They're charging me the 15 minutes. It's not 15 minutes or 20 minutes. They're gonna charge me half an hour of their hourly rate. I only want you when I need you. That's me. Okay? So another example of an artifact. So it's getting more and more complicated. This is sort of the intro into the world, okay, of digital. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Everybody wants one. The challenge is going to be, how do you make this happen? And I always claim $100 divided by 4 is how much? 25. I can afford $25 for overhead. Can we not make an office work where I work Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, you work Tuesdays, Thursdays, and somebody works evenings? Just saying. And if I want green in my office, the 2 rooms that I use, can I have green? Yes. Can you have purple? Yes. We can make it work, right? You have to come to grips with the expense, or your student loans for one thing, the expense of the equipment, and the fact that reimbursement rates for any time now are gonna stay flat. Not everybody can do a cash practice, okay? The insurance companies are saying, if we reimburse or deny, they want the reimbursements to go down as well, okay? Now, how does that work? They notice that when chiropractors take x-rays, I come in and I complain of ankle and foot pain. What do the MR centers do? They say, oh, it's ankle and foot. I'll take an x-ray of the ankle and the foot, 2 areas of reimbursement, right? What does the chiropractor do? Which hurts more? Oh, it's the foot. I'm only gonna take a foot x-ray to save you some money. So what's the insurance company do? They're tracking all these chiropractors who are taking just a foot x-ray. So they're saying, okay, we used to reimburse for 2 views. The foot, you're only taking 1.
So now we're only gonna pay for one.
We're only gonna pay for 1.
It's crazy.
We're doing,
Shooting ourselves.
okay, we're shooting ourselves wherever you wanna shoot yourself, in a bad way, okay?
In the foot.
We have to stop, you have to think about that,
Yeah.
okay?
Damn.
That's what the insurance companies want to do because they want to stop this reimbursement. They want to take all that excess money and invest it for a year, and the interest alone is more than 2,500 chiropractors make in a year, okay? So they're out to deny. You want to make sure your documentation is so airtight, they don't have that opportunity, okay?
Mhm.
All right. Last statement. 4 attorneys get together. They understand the value of splitting the overhead 4 ways. Okay? So how do they negotiate? They say, okay, Jeremy, you want out? Okay, your buyout fee is going to be $250,000. Your buy-in might have been 10 grand, right? Because Dorian wants to spend 90 of his own. Your share of that is $10,000. Okay? The 4 of us are going to office together. For you to leave us, it's going to cost you $250,000. You want to spend that kind of money?
No,
Okay, why not? It's out of your,
Really?
I ain't got it.
you ain't got it, it's out of your pocket. So what does that force you to do? Sit down, negotiate, and work out these differences that we seem to think are a big deal. I don't care what you do in your office, okay? But wouldn't a chiropractor, neurologist, a sports medicine guy, and give me another specialist,
Back bar.
okay? In one office, one X-ray machine, but you could refer to each other. Okay, let's bring in a PT. Let's bring in a rad tech. You don't even have to take your own X-rays. All that depresses your what? Your overhead expense. But if you want to leave, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. We, as a profession, in my humble opinion, haven't sorted that out. The attorneys have. It's going to cost you if you leave this thing. We need to sit down and sort this out, and sometimes it takes a while. So you have a different dynamic. You have an office with multiple people. If you're best friends, you can work it out, and I'm sure you can, okay? Things happen. I'm sure there's attorneys that leave, they say, okay, it's gonna cost me this, it's worth it to me. But it forces you to think about it and obviously negotiate, okay?
Yes.
All right, the other good news is the most challenging part, the technical part of the course is over. From here on in, it's application time, digital imaging. We're going to talk about bone scanning, CTs, and MRIs because we need that for the next semester. So the worst technical KVP, MAS stuff is done with, okay? On the 3rd modular exam, it's Rad Bio, digital imaging acquisition systems, and advanced imaging techniques. Give you an introduction on what do we mean when we say bone scan, CT scan, what are the values of it. The minute you graduate, you can order a $1,000 MRI exam. You have to understand that. But the way the insurance companies work now is they have a bucket. We used to have 2 buckets, one for diagnostic and one for treatment. Now you have 1 bucket, and there's $1,500 in the bucket for chiropractor, and you spend $1,000 for a test that wasn't necessary, how much is left for your treatment? $500. We want you to make, it's back to good clinical decision. You can get the MRI when you need it, okay? But maybe a diagnostic ultrasound will also fit if it's a hand injury. It's less expensive. So we have to know what the tools are, what their applications are, and MRI still is the most expensive. Yes, you can get a MRI in Miami, Dade County for $250 cash. It's going to be billed at $1,000 technical component. That's what the MR center is going to bill the insurance company, and they'll get 80% of that. Okay? That's some of those are some of the reality. Okay, and as always, if I see the cases for your box, normal variants, like the cervical block vertebral body, you'll see it. So now it's all about the information that's in your brain and trying to apply it. And I also know we're at week 10, we have 2 more projects to do to get 5 in, and I'll make sure I know what else we need to get done. Well, we have a lumbar spine practical and the comprehensive. Okay? So, time is,
You can-
yes ma'am, yes sir.